Have you ever noticed how some people seem invisible even when they are right in front of you? Jonathan is exactly like that, the guy everyone underestimates, but who carries an intensity that few can see. He spends his whole life trying to fit in, struggling with the feeling of not being enough, while facing monsters that go far beyond the upside down. But what if I told you that all this struggle reveals something you can also apply in your own life? Today, we are going to dive into Jonathan's mind, understand the traumas that shaped his choices, and discover how what seems weak or strange is actually hidden power. Get ready, because this analysis is going to turn everything you think you know about strength and vulnerability upside down. If you are a fan of cinema, psychology, and want to understand the mind behind your favorite character, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single video. But first, comment down below which character you want me to analyze here on the channel. Now, let's go to the video. Jonathan always seems like that guy who arrives quietly, but carries an entire universe inside his head. He is the typical observer that nobody notices until the moment he drops a truth so accurate that it almost shakes the room. He grew up in Hawkins, which is not exactly a place where someone like him easily fits in. And yet, he finds ways to survive amidst family chaos, literal monsters, and internal monsters. The curious thing is that the more you look at him, the more you realize how many people feel the same way. He is the older brother who became an adult too early, the one who trades play for responsibility because someone had to do it. And that trade changes everything, right? He is the type of person who gets used to solving things alone, without asking for help, because he learned early that waiting can be dangerous. You know that friend who always says it's okay with the face of someone who just carried the world on their shoulders? That is exactly that vibe. And that creates a somewhat magnetic, somewhat melancholic aura. Jonathan has always had a more artistic, more sensitive look, almost as if he is seeing the subtleties that the rest of the crowd ignores. Photography for him was never a hobby, but a way to breathe in a world that is too noisy. I know a lot of people who do the same, finding refuge in something quiet to avoid getting lost in the noise of their own lives. And this sensitivity becomes both a shield and a vulnerability. What he sees, he feels, and what he feels, he carries. The relationship with family greatly shapes his energy. Joyce is intense, emotional, a whirlwind of love and despair. Will is a living reminder of everything Jonathan tried to protect and did not always succeed. He is always trying to patch emotional holes, even before realizing that his own are bleeding too. It is like someone holding a leaky umbrella in the storm but insisting, no, seriously, it still works. And behind this more introspective side, there is a heart that beats loudly. Even if nobody hears, Jonathan loves quietly, somewhat crookedly, but absurdly loyal. And I see a lot of people like that. People who do not know how to make noise with feelings. So they love in details, in small gestures that almost go unnoticed. He is like this with family, friends, and even life, always giving more than it seems. There is also a side of him that constantly wonders if he is doing everything right. Who hasn't felt that, right? It is like driving with the GPS off but still trying to keep the car on track. He is always measuring every step, every choice, always afraid of causing more harm than help. And this creates a kind of constant tension in him, a silent anxiety that only those who feel it can understand. Jonathan's story always seems to ask to be read between the lines. He is not the chosen one, not the classic hero, not the popular guy, not the one illuminated by the spotlight. He is the one who lives in the shadows, but observes everything with surgical precision. And, ironically, this position is what makes him one of the most human characters in the series. He is the kind of person you only truly understand when you pay attention. And of course, this quieter way hides an emotional world that only grows with everything happening in Hawkins. Every monster, every scare, every loss, everything hits him differently. And this opens doors to conflicts much deeper than any Demogorgon could reach. In fact, that is exactly where the next point of his journey begins, where responsibility turns into weight and weight turns into trauma. The weight of early responsibility and the role reversal in the family. Jonathan grew up as that teenager who never had time to be a teenager. While the school crowd complained about tests, he was worried about bills, food, and the emotional well-being of his mother and brother. This role reversal makes anyone mature too quickly, and it is as if every year of life counts for two. I know many people who lived this early responsibility and still carry in their body the memory of this urgency. There is no way to come out unscathed. He was always the first to wake up and the last to rest, almost by instinct. You know when a person creates a radar for any sign of danger or chaos? Jonathan lives in this state without realizing it. It is almost automatic, like someone who has spent so much time putting out fires that now reacts even when seeing just a little smoke. And the most curious thing is that for him, this was never heroism. It was survival, silent survival, almost stubborn. This kind of responsibility creates a sense of vigilance that comes at an emotional cost. He does not truly relax, does not delegate, does not let go of the wheel at any moment. And that reminds me of adults who grew up taking care of younger siblings, and even today have difficulty trusting that the world will not collapse if they simply breathe. The mind does not understand that the danger has passed, the body even less. And when the child becomes the adult of the house, a huge internal conflict arises. One part of him wanted to live his own life, pursue his dreams, get lost in silly passions, have time to make mistakes without guilt. The other part feels that if he looks at himself for 5 minutes, something will happen to the people he loves. This internal tug-of-war is exhausting, and I think many people will see themselves in this dilemma. It is almost a guilt of existing. Jonathan also learned to hide behind the phrase, "it's okay," even when it wasn't. He grew up believing that showing fatigue was a luxury he could not afford, and over time, this becomes a habit, right? Like when someone spends years saying they are fine until they forget what it is like to ask for comfort. This emotional armor works in the short term, but in the long term becomes a maze with no exit. He gets lost inside it. And the craziest thing is that to outsiders, he seems strong, stable, even tough. But anyone who has carried too much weight knows that this toughness is just the way the body finds not to break. He became good at holding everything, but nobody asked if he wanted to hold it. This happens to many people who became support too early. We get used to having no support and think it is normal, but it is not. The problem is that too much responsibility steals space from identity. Jonathan grew up doing what was needed, not necessarily what he wanted. And this creates a kind of strange emptiness, as if he had skipped steps that everyone should live through. People who grow up like this usually become adults with that feeling of always being late, as if they had missed an important chapter of their own story. And it is precisely in this space between who he had to be and who he would like to be that many of his deepest conflicts are born. Early responsibility was just the beginning of the weight he will carry throughout the series. And it serves as a gateway to even more silent traumas which shape everything in the way he loves, works, and exists. And then the story really starts to tighten. The feeling of emotional invisibility and the fear of not being enough. Jonathan has always been the type of person who goes unnoticed even when he is screaming inside. It is not that others ignore him out of malice, but because he learned to shrink emotionally. He avoids taking up space, avoids bothering anyone, avoids being too much. This creates a permanent shadow, as if he exists only on the edges of the scene. And anyone who has ever felt invisible knows exactly how much that hurts. This feeling comes from his routine, always taking care of everyone, always patching holes, always solving, and never receiving. A person gets used to being support, but forgets that they also need to be sustained. And when someone tries to help, he even reacts strangely, like, "Are you sure?" It is such an automatic mechanism that he does not even notice how much he fades in the name of the other. You can see that this has become a pattern, and this fading creates a silent fear of not being enough. You know that inner voice that says nobody notices you because you have nothing special? Jonathan has been hearing that for years. He grew up in school being the stranger, at home being the responsible one, and deep down believes that he does not have much to offer beyond that. It is terrible because this belief becomes a lens, and he starts to see himself always at a disadvantage, always smaller. I have seen many people living this cycle, especially those who grew up in environments where affection had to compete with urgencies. When life demands too much from us too early, there is little time left to develop self-esteem. And with Jonathan, this appears in the way he avoids looking at himself. It is as if the mirror were an enemy, because there he only sees what is missing, never what exists, an inverted emotional perfectionism. The fear of not being enough also manifests in relationships. Jonathan is the type of person who loves with fear. He fears disappointing, fears being a burden, fears being left aside. So he doubles the care, doubles the effort, doubles the silence. It is as if he loves in advance and apologizes for existing at the same time. People who live with this insecurity end up entering relationships with a constantly tense heart. And when he tries to show himself, it always seems to come out halfway. He is the kind of person who starts to open up but freezes in the middle because he feels he does not have the right to take up that much space. And behind this block, there is enormous loneliness. It is not loneliness due to a lack of people, but due to a lack of emotional recognition. The worst loneliness is when you are surrounded but do not feel seen. Jonathan lives in this limbo. The problem is that this fear of not being enough makes him never see his own power. He does not realize how sensitive, intelligent, loyal, and intuitive he is. And it is frustrating because you watch the series and think, man, you have so much value and you do not even know it. But emotionally, it is common. We learn to see ourselves based on how the world treated us in our early years. And he learned that too much shine gets in the way. This feeling of invisibility gradually shapes a personality full of nuances, and it is precisely from it that other, even deeper conflicts arise. The idea of not being enough does not come alone. It mixes with old pains, broken expectations, and even family figures who left marks that are hard to ignore. And then, when this wound encounters the image of the father, everything becomes even more intense. The wound caused by the unstable father figure and his view of masculinity. Jonathan's father has always been a present ghost, but never truly present. He was the kind of man who only shows up to remind you that he is not there, you know? And when he does appear, he causes more damage than presence. This creates a strange wound, because it is not just about abandonment, it is about growing up with a broken reference of masculinity. He learns early that the world may expect little from men and yet still be disappointed. This unstable father also pushes Jonathan toward forced maturity. It is as if he had to fill the space his father left empty, even before understanding what a father should be. Those who grew up with absence know how this becomes a confusing weight. You try to compensate, try to be better, try not to repeat the cycle, but no one showed you the basics. It is like assembling a large piece of furniture without a manual, just by intuition. And the most painful part is that this type of absence directly affects self-esteem. The child thinks, if my father did not stay, it is because I was not worth that much. It is cruel, but that is how the mind works. Jonathan carries this silent doubt, this fear that something in him is less, and this shapes the way he behaves in the world. Always on guard, always afraid of disappointing, even when it has nothing to do with him. This messy relationship with his father also shapes how he understands masculinity. He looks at this male figure and thinks, if this is being a man, I want the opposite. And he truly tries. Jonathan grows up being sensitive, caring, generous, as if he wants to prove to the world and to himself that it is possible to be a man without being cold, aggressive, or absent. It is beautiful, but it is also born from pain. I have spoken to many people who live this same conflict. The person grows up trying to be everything their father was not, but at the same time, the wound is still there, throbbing. With Jonathan, this paradox appears in the way he always tries to be too good. He pushes himself, demands of himself, wants to be impeccable because the idea of failing seems to repeat the cycle he most fears. It is heavy to carry this without realizing it. And this paternal emptiness makes him seek validation in subtle ways, sometimes in small gestures of approval, sometimes in relationships, sometimes in work. It is as if he is always waiting for someone to say, "You did right." But since he never had that reference, he never fully believes in the praise. He receives it but does not absorb it. It is the kind of wound patched up with emotional duct tape. This also deeply affects his fear of becoming someone who hurts. He grows up with horror at resembling his father, so he overexerts himself to avoid any behavior that resembles aggression, selfishness, or coldness. This effort shapes the way he loves, works, relates, talks, and makes choices. He lives under constant internal surveillance, policing even his thoughts. It is exhausting, but he does not even notice. And when this pain mixes with everything he has already experienced at home, a deeper kind of guilt arises. He does not want to repeat his father, does not want to fail Will, does not want to disappoint Joyce. And this pressure creates new layers of trauma, which mix with the guilt he already feels for other things. And it is exactly there that the roots of the next conflict are born, which directly involves his brother, the chronic guilt involving Will, and the tendency to self-sacrifice. Jonathan carries a guilt that seems to have been born the same day he realized Will was more fragile than him. Since childhood, he feels the need to compensate for something, as if protecting his brother were a personal mission that nobody assigned, but he took on impulsively. And when Will disappears, this guilt turns into a storm. He starts thinking about all the what-ifs. It is the type of thought that sticks in the mind and does not let go. This guilt is not rational, but it is intense. He thinks he should have been a perfect shield, an infallible radar, a super-powered brother who would prevent any tragedy. And anyone who has experienced something similar knows how consuming that is. A person sees themselves as a failure even when there was nothing they could have done. It is as if the brain creates an alternative narrative where responsibility is always theirs. And Jonathan lets himself be swallowed by this narrative. When Will returns, the protective instinct doubles in size. He begins to live as if he is always owing something to the universe. He takes care, watches, observes, analyzes signals like someone who has already lost once and will not allow losing again. This becomes an internal, permanent alert system. And people who function like this rarely rest. The body may sit, but the mind stays standing, ready to react to any shadow. And this sense of guilt generates a dangerous tendency, self-sacrifice. Jonathan always puts himself last, always. He gives up opportunities, dreams, time, energy. He does this naturally, as if it were the right thing to do. And in a way, it is beautiful to see someone so willing to take care. But emotionally, it is an enormous risk. The person starts disappearing bit by bit, thinking they are doing the minimum. I have seen many people living exactly like this, taking on responsibilities that are not theirs, sacrificing everything to prevent pain they have no control over. And when I talk to these people, I always notice the same pattern. They had stories similar to Jonathan's, stories where someone needed to be protected. And they decided, without realizing it, that this would be their identity, but it comes at a high cost in the future. This self-sacrifice even becomes a way to avoid one's own suffering, he thinks. If I focus on Will's problem, I do not need to deal with mine. It is an emotional escape disguised as altruism, and it works well in the short term because it gives a sense of purpose. But the bill comes, it always comes. Sooner or later, the person realizes that they spent so much time putting out fires that they forgot to take care of their own heart. And the most complicated part is that the more he sacrifices, the more he feels he is still not enough. It is a cruel cycle. He gives everything but thinks he should give more. It is the type of mentality that never finds rest. Jonathan lives with this constant sense of debt, and because of that, he rarely allows himself to feel lightness, full joy, or even pride in himself. It is as if he did not have that right. In this dynamic, a pattern emerges that will influence all his future relationships. A pattern where he gives too much, exhausts himself too much, feels too much, and this mixes with other pains, other insecurities, especially those involving belonging or not belonging to the world around him. This next trauma touches something even deeper, his identity as a person. And then, after diving into Jonathan's mind, what did you think of this journey through the conflicts and traumas that shape who he is? Can you see yourself in any of these moments of insecurity, isolation, or silent determination? Now tell me, which character do you want me to analyze in the next video on the channel? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can continue learning about the psychology behind your favorite characters and not miss a single detail of these analyses that go far beyond the surface.